Hello again, or if you have just joined us, welcome to the Canting Club. This week's wine is a red from New Zealand. Now that's fairly unusual to begin with. New Zealand is famed for its white wines, especially cool climate varieties like Sauvignon Blanc. If you ever see a Kiwi red, it's almost certainly made from Pinot Noir, the most cool climate loving of black grapes. But this isn't. You can tell by its extraordinary deep colour. This is from a much more hot climate variety, the Malbec, famed as Argentina's signature red. What's it doing in New Zealand? How could they ripen it? We'll find out, but after we've tasted it. But first, let's admire that extraordinarily deep purple-red colour. It's really intense, and if you hold it up against a white background or at an angle and look through the rim of the wine, you can see a really vivid magenta colour. That's really characteristic of this grape, the Malbec. It doesn't smell cool climate. That's rich and ripe, with blackberries and damson jam, and pungent spicy notes of licorice and of cloves. And on top of that, a dusting of cocoa powder, just a hint of chocolate. Lovely. Now that's fully dry and inkily deep and dense, but with fresh fruit flavours of blackberries and black cherries especially. They're backed up by bittersweet dark chocolate and perhaps just a hint of mint. Although this tastes really fresh and unoaked, which I think is good, the acidity actually isn't much more than medium. The structure on this wine is carried by the tannins rather more than the acidity. There's a lot of tannins on this, but they're wonderfully ripe and soft, so they're not harsh or drying at all. And they lead on into the finish, where the spices make a return, the licorice and also a warming pepperiness. Great balance also on the finish between the acid and the tannins, so that it stays juicy and doesn't dry out. This is absolutely textbook Malbec. How did they do this in New Zealand? Well, this is from the warmest, driest and sunniest of New Zealand's wine regions, Hawke's Bay, the only one with a real reputation for reds. Its climate, though, is still perhaps a little cooler than, say, Bordeaux in France. And they grow a lot of Bordeaux varieties, Cabernet Franc, Merlot especially, Cab Sauv. It shouldn't be warm enough here to ripen hot climate varieties like Syrah or Malbec. But there's one tiny place where they can, due to a fluke of geography. This is the Gimblett Gravels, the hotspot for New Zealand reds. Back in the 1860s, one of the major rivers running down from the mountains behind the bay changed its course in a giant flood, leaving behind its dry river valley, flat and filled with deep, deep gravel beds laid down by the river. This is a sun trap, a hotspot. The steep valley walls shield it from the cooling sea breezes, and the arid, stony soils heat up very, very quickly in the morning, and then they re-radiate that heat onto the vines in the late afternoon. This keeps the whole thing 2 or 3 degrees warmer than the surrounding area, which is just what you need if you need to ripen Malbec. The upshot is that this is a glorious example of this warm climate grape from a cool climate country. It's perhaps a bit fresher and cooler than you'd get from Argentina, most Argentinian examples, which are often a little low in acidity. This doesn't suffer from that, and it's a great, definitive example of this grape. But as the only New Zealand Malbec in existence, I guess it has to be. Cheers.